Do you ever feel like your muscles are tight, whether it's your neck or your shoulders or your back or your hamstrings or your hip flexors? These are areas that we hear about all the time from people that their body is just feeling tight. Well, two of the most common things to do about that are stretching and massage. But is there anything else that you can do to actually help your muscles feel looser without doing stretching or massage? That is the exact question that we're going to be exploring on today's episode of the Exercise is Health podcast. We're going to cue the intro song and then we're going to dive right into the conversation. Welcome to the Exercise is Health podcast, where we're talking about exercise, health, and the interconnectedness of the two. We are your hosts, Charlie
and Julie,
and we will be coming to you every single week from our studio, Muscle Activation Schaumburg. Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Charlie. Before we dive into this week's episode, I want to let you know that we recently released a book called The Exercise for Life Method. And if you enjoy the conversations that we have every single week on this podcast, then you are going to love this book. So to pick up a free copy of this book, all you have to do is go to exerciseforlifemethod.com. Now, without further ado, let's dive into this week's episode. Hey, welcome back, exercisers, to the Exercise is Health podcast. We are your hosts, Charlie
and Julie,
and we're coming to you from our studio, Muscle Activation Schaumburg, here in Schaumburg, Illinois, where we believe that your health is your most valuable asset, and the single best thing that you can do to both boost and protect this asset is exercise. Specifically, exercise is geared towards building the health and function of your muscles. Now, we want to take a quick moment and just say thank you to every single one of you exercisers who've taken the time to leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. It means the world to us when you do that. And so we want to highlight one right now that we've recently received.
This 5-star review is titled Unique Perspective and says, I love this podcast. It is not just for fitness buffs, but for the regular person wanting to live a lifestyle of being active. Great tips and perspective for exercise and muscle activation techniques. Thank you so much for that 5-star review. And I absolutely love some of the things that were said in that review because it is so true. Exercise is not just for fitness buffs, but a lot of the media and marketing about exercise is only for fitness buffs. So we hope that you, our community of exercisers, are really taking the points that we're making in this podcast because it is for the regular person trying to live a great, healthy, and active lifestyle.
Hey, Julie, question for you.
Okay,
so out of all the clients you've worked with throughout your entire career, percentage-wise, actually don't give me a specifics. Are we going to talk like a lot of them or very few of them? How many of them have ever said like, oh, my body feels a little bit tight today?
All of them.
Yeah, right? I mean, essentially like all of them, right? So this feeling of tightness, almost across the board, it's something that we have all experienced at one point or another. And there are some very common remedies that we're told we need to do in order to help address this, whether it's stretching or massage or, sometimes we get into foam rolling and things like that. But I wonder if there's anything else that we can do in order to help address, or loosen this feeling of tightness. And in fact, there is. And that's exactly what we want to talk with you about today, because a lot of times what we find is that when people just focus on stretching or things like that, those tight muscles, they kind of come back. They might feel looser for a little bit of time, but it's usually not too long before they start feeling tight again. So what are some things that you could do that either in addition to stretching or in replace of stretching that may actually help you feel a little bit looser for longer?
Absolutely, Charlie. And I'm so glad we're talking about this today because there are some common things that people do to loosen their muscles, but I've done those things before. You've done those things before. And something that I always got really frustrated about was the amount of time and frequency that I had to do those things to get my muscles to have the sensation of being relaxed or loose. I remember actually like stretching and doing foam rolling and massaging before and after every single workout. And then also, I used to do this in college in my dorm room. And I remember thinking like, thank goodness I like stretching because I have to do this a lot and I have to think about it a lot. So it begs the question of, hey, is there other stuff that we could be doing that's a little more efficient? Or are my muscles always going to feel tight due to lack of stretching because I just can't even do enough to feel good? So what we've learned over the years is that when muscles are not functioning properly or when they're not contracting efficiently, they often will have the sensation of tightness. And it's mostly because they're not functioning as well as they could and they're not operating as efficiently as they could. So they are limited in their ability to operate as a muscle. And so what we have found, and what many of our colleagues have found, and people that practice the way we do using the resistance training specialist and muscle activation techniques, is that when we can improve muscles' ability to contract and do this in a strategic and appropriate manner, our muscles often will lose that sensation of tightness. And when we do this on repeat, meaning every time we work out, every time we go to the gym to activate our muscles and contract our muscles and challenge our muscles, or when you go to your home gym, or let's just say it's your living room, you're using these concepts, then muscles will, number one, loosen up, in my experience, almost immediately, meaning in the workout, not like I give you an injection and it's immediately gone, but within the hour. And it is consistent. It is easy to replicate. So we want to teach you the concepts, or at least talk about the concepts of what to apply to your workouts right now that will change the sensation of tightness. And not because we've relaxed muscles, but because they've relaxed themselves due to improving muscle function. So the reason for being tight and the reason for being less functional is not even present. Like, we can kind of get rid of that.
I love that, Julie. And I remember when I was in college as well, like I was totally on board with spending 45 minutes stretching every day, 20 minutes to, foam rolling and everything like that. And yet when I graduated college, my body was still so tight. And it really didn't matter how much I stretched or how much I rolled or how much I massaged. Eventually my body, and eventually meaning like within 24 hours, my body would feel so tight again. But once I started implementing different things with my workouts and, a lot of what we're going to be discussing today, that's when really that sensation of tightness started to change for me to the point where I wasn't chronically tight anymore. I didn't have those aches and pains anymore that I was just trying to, cover up or, quickly relieve with the stretching and whatnot. So what we're talking about today is super important. Whether you feel like your muscles are super tight or whether you don't want your muscles to get like you're feeling okay now and, you're trying to exercise more consistently. You're like, okay, well, I don't want my muscles to feel tight and, achy and sore and all that stuff. This will work for you as well in terms of helping to prevent that. And there are three really big things that we want you to be focusing on with your workouts. So we're going to kind of break each of those down for you during this episode.
The first thing, it's so important. I actually just had a conversation with a client about this, and then I realized that the conversation wasn't even good enough, so I had to show her. So listen carefully. You need to respect your range of motion when you weight train or when you exercise in general. What this means is that you are not going past your range where your body says it's good. Okay? This is how you do it. So listen up. And I'm being very specific with this. So the place where my client didn't realize was that she thought this was general advice and not specific advice. And I think a lot of us think that when it comes to exercise. And I think because exercise has the overarching umbrella, well, just do it and it's better than nothing. Okay, well, this is very specific advice. So when you are exercising or weight training, you need to check your range of motion before you add weight or before you apply any extra forces. So let me give you an example of this. You sit down on the hip abduction machine. That's like the in and out hip thingy thing. So if you're going to work on the hip adductors, which is squeezing in, that means that you have to like pull up the lever and take your legs apart and have the machine start the setting there. So wherever your legs can go apart by themselves, that's where you need to stop. And so once you find out how far apart your legs can go without using your arm to pull further, without holding on to the lever and pulling it further, that's where you need to stop. And if you're in between two settings, you need to go to the lesser setting. And so what happened is when I was with my client, she's like, yeah, but this feels like not that much range. Yeah, but it's your range. It doesn't matter how much the machine can go or how much other people are doing because they're probably violating their range. You need to do where your body says, not more, even if it's just 2 degrees more, not more. You either need to do where your body can go or a little bit less.
Seriously, if you just change this one thing with your workouts, the after effects of your workouts on your body will be dramatically different as far as like how your body feels and how your body functions and the tightness that you're feeling throughout your body. Just stay within the range of motion that your body can do. Don't try to exceed it. Now, so often we think, well, I need to go full range with my exercise, whatever that means. Like I need to move as much as my joints can move in order to get the benefits of exercise. Well, here's the thing. Most of the time when people try to do their full range, they're actually going way past their full range. They're doing more than what their body actually says, like, okay, yeah, this is how much we should do right now. And that's a problem. That's a problem in the short term because it causes us to feel sore and tight and achy and stuff like that. And it's really a problem over the long term because it sets us up for, an increased potential risk for injury. So just taking stock in how your body's moving before you do each exercise and while you're doing each exercise, and just respecting how much your body can move today. Don't put any judgment to it of like, oh, I should be moving more, or this is less than last time, or anything like that. None of that matters. Just stay within what you can do today. That alone will make a world of difference with how your body feels during and after your workouts and the tightness that you feel throughout your body.
Charlie, I think you brought up the point that most people bring up where it's like, yeah, but I want to do full range of motion. And exactly, that is exactly what we're saying. We want you to do full range of motion. We wanted you to do your full range of motion because contrary to popular belief, everyone's skeleton will allow different motion. And you could be saying, oh, well, but in yoga, like everyone can touch their toes and I can't, so I'm not doing full range of motion. Okay, but everyone that does yoga, most of those people, their bodies are structured in a way so that they're probably pretty good at yoga. And people that aren't very good at yoga or their skeleton doesn't really allow for all those yoga poses, they probably will slowly start to lose interest because they're not really able to achieve those motions. So it doesn't mean that you can't participate like in yoga, but don't compare yourself to like a community of people. Just like if you were saying, oh, well, all the basketball players can dunk, like that's full range of motion. I should be able to, but no.
It's like saying I'm going to play basketball so I get taller.
Exactly. So when you exercise, you need to be doing full range of motion, not more, maybe a little less, not much less, but you want to make sure that it's your full range of motion and not the guy that was on the machine before you, not what's on the picture, not what you saw in women's or men's health magazine or whatever those magazines are called. You need to be checking your own range of motion and being respectful so that you can do your full range of motion.
All right, now the second tip that you need to include with your workouts is while you are using your full range of motion, while you are doing the exercise, you need to keep your focus on squeezing your muscles. Now, the cool thing about this is including this tip will help you achieve the first tip so much easier. Because when you just focus on squeezing your muscles, you will feel when your muscles say, yeah, you know what, we can't move you any farther. We can't do any more motion right now because this is as much as we can move. And then you say, oh, okay, I guess this is my full range of motion going this direction. So then you can pause and then you can go back, and do the other half of the exercise and feel where your muscles say, yeah, you know what, this is as far as we can move, because you are focused on squeezing your muscles. You're focused on what's going on within your body. All right. So Not only will this help you respect your range of motion and more effectively utilize the range of motion that your body has, ultimately it will get you better results from your workouts as well, because one of the things that influences the results from your workouts is how much signal gets sent to your muscles, and focusing on squeezing your muscles gets more signal being sent to those muscles. So that's going to give you better workouts. It's also going to allow you to recover faster from your workouts, which will allow you to repeat your workouts more frequently, again, allowing you to get better results from your workouts. So this is a really huge tip, and especially if you feel like, well, how do I know like what my range of motion is? Focus on squeezing your muscles while you're doing the exercise, and you will be able to sense when your body says, yeah, we shouldn't move any farther. And then that's your full range of motion.
You know, one of the biggest reasons why muscles get tight in the first place is that there's been too much blank on them. There's been too much, and I'm going to do like a blanket category of there's been too much stress on them. Now, in the gym, we normally will say, oh, I'm sore because I did more weight than I did last time. And so one way to make sure you're not doing too much weight is to really focus on contraction. If you are saying, I'm going to do this bicep curl with the mission of squeezing my biceps, and I'm going to make my biceps the forefront of my brain, and I'm going to make it so that my biceps feel like it is leading the motion, rather than saying, I'm going to lift these dumbbells up and down, and then eventually I'll start feeling the biceps burn, and those are the same things. No, they're different. You need to be squeezing your bicep to create the motion, and as soon as you can't squeeze your biceps to create the motion, well, then listen to that. You need to stop the motion, because the whole reason for moving in the first place was let the biceps do that motion. So by prioritizing your contraction, it's going to eliminate the possibility that you're doing too much stress in terms of weight in the gym. And point number one is actually the biggest reason why people get sore, which is you are doing too much stress in terms of range. And that might be a weird thing for you, because we've never been told that too much range is not good, because we've been indoctrinated into this culture of stretching all the time, forcing range of motion all the time, grab your foot and pull, all those things. And so these first two tips are incredibly potent in eliminating two of the biggest stressors that happen in the gym that cause tight muscles in the first place. Number one, too much stress in terms of range. So we're going to be respecting our own full range of motion, not someone else's. And number two is going to be eliminating the stress of too much weight.
All right, so while these first two tips were maybe a little bit more technical or a little bit more applied to like do this while you're working out, our third tip can be utilized anytime, and it's very straightforward. All right. It's make sure you're getting up and moving frequently throughout the day, and do it on a consistent basis. It's as simple as that. Now you might be thinking, okay, well, why does that actually make a difference? All right. Have you ever sat down and, in the car and did a 2 or 3 hour car ride, and by the time you get to your destination and you stand up and you're like, oh yeah, wow, I'm a little bit stiff, I'm a little bit achy, and then you kind of move around a little bit and like, oh wow, yeah, actually that's feeling a lot better. Okay, so that's a very easy scenario for all of us to grasp. All right, so that's a very clear example of like, yeah, you haven't been moving for a while, stand on up, move around. When you do it more consistently throughout your day, guess what? You get that same after effect of like, okay, yeah, like I'm feeling better. Like I'm moving my joints. I'm using my muscles. My muscles are squeezing and contracting. And so that's a really important thing. It's a really, really simple thing. Okay. Diving in a little bit deeper is like, Julie, you talked about, okay, well, when something is too much for your muscles, essentially when there's, some stress created for your muscles, right? Well, one thing that can occur from that is inflammation. When your muscles start to get inflamed, they may start to feel a little bit tight, a little bit achy. Well, here's the thing. Sedentary muscles, inactive muscles, they actually produce pro-inflammatory molecules. So when you're not using your muscles for an extended period of time, these inflammatory processes that are, usually a little bit more reserved in your body, they can start to get a little bit more amped up. which can start to stress out your muscles, which can start to kind of stress out your nervous system. And your body lets you know that this is happening by saying, hey, we haven't moved for a while. You're starting to feel a little tight and achy. Remember the last time this happened and you got up, you moved around, you felt better? Yeah, well, why don't we try doing that? Like, that's your body's way of telling you. Just like your body's way of telling you that you're hungry is like, your stomach starts growling. It's like, hey, remember the last time this happened and you ate and you felt better? The same thing happens with, your muscles and being sedentary. Your body says, well, remember the last time this happened and, you were feeling tight and achy and then you kind of stood up and you felt better? It's time to do that now. Here's your warning signal. So this one is not super technical. It's really straightforward, but it's really important to do.
It is really important to do, and I think we all know that it's important to do, and we just feel like we want to shoo it under the rug and say, like, I know it's important to do, and then we leave it at that. So anyways, I was just talking about how muscles get tight when there is too much stress in a certain category on them. So we talked about of too much range. We talked about of too much weight in the gym. But we don't often recognize that the positions that we're in for a really long time when we're sedentary can be very stressful on the body. An example of this is if you work at a desk or you take a really long car ride, we don't imagine that sitting in a chair is stressful or taxing on the body. But actually, it's kind of an extreme position for the hips. We're very hip flexed. And what happens is that is a form of stress on the body, is like not moving through that range and also being held in kind of an extreme range. And so really getting up and moving to alleviate that stress can be really, really helpful for your sensation of tightness and starting to combat your daily tightness.
So if you're feeling tight and achy throughout your day, you have for a while, and you've just been focusing on stretching and massage, and yeah, you get some relief for a little bit, but you're wanting something that may last a little bit longer term, consider adding in these tips to not only your workouts, but your daily routine as well. Make sure that you are fully respecting your range of motion every single time you go and exercise. And while you're doing so, you are focused on squeezing your muscles during each exercise, and then get up and move consistently throughout your day. These three things, while they may seem pretty simple and not that impactful, they will make a world of difference for you if you implement them consistently. So who do you know that needs to hear this episode? Who do you know whose muscles are feeling pretty tight, feeling pretty achy, and they are looking for something that they can add in to do consistently aside from stretching and massage? Share this episode with them so they can learn about some exercise things to start adding in. And while you're online, head on over to Apple Podcasts and leave us a rating and review. It helps people find this episode when they're looking for information on exercise and when they're looking for information on health. So if you found value in this conversation today, let us know by leaving us a 5-star rating and review. Well, thanks so much for tuning in. We always appreciate it. Have a fantastic week, and we'll talk with you all next week. So how'd you like that episode? Did you find the information useful? If you enjoyed what we discussed today, then you are going to love the Exercise for Life Method, which is a book that we just put out, and you can get a free copy of by going to exerciseforlifemethod.com. All we ask is that you pay for shipping and handling, so head there now and get your free copy, as well as some exclusive bonuses that you will get instant access to when you get the book. You can learn more and get your copy at exerciseforlifemethod.com. This podcast is for information purposes only. The statements and views on this podcast are not medical advice. This podcast, including Julie and Charlie Cates, disclaim responsibility for any possible adverse effects from the use of information contained herein. Opinions of guests are their own, and this podcast does not endorse or accept responsibility for statements made by guests. This podcast does not make any representations or warranties about guest qualifications or credibility. This podcast may contain paid endorsements or advertisements for products or services. Individuals on this podcast may have a direct or indirect financial interest in products or services referred to herein. If you think you have a medical issue, consult a licensed physician.